Okay, Vital, over to you.
Thanks, Jim, and thank you all for taking the time to join us on this panel discussions and for our participants. My name is Vital Prabhu. I'm a faculty in Penn State's Industrial Engineering Department. And this is something that Jim and I put together at the beginning of this year. We see a lot of transformation going on in a variety of industries, especially in services, because they have usually lagged behind in terms of productivity and also applying engineering techniques, unlike, say, manufacturing. So my department historically has been known for its strength in manufacturing. So we see this as a good opportunity in terms of education as well as research. And we'd love to hear from you in terms of your experiences, your expertise. Where do you think this particular industry is going to go forward? Today we have the focus on hospitality and retail. Both of these industries have been plagued with very high employee turnovers, especially in the US, maybe elsewhere in the world too. Over 60% of employees turn over every year. So that's indicator of some kind of an underlying problem. So hopefully we learn some things in today's panel discussion. Uh, Jim, next slide, please. So as you can see on this slide, we've covered healthcare, finance, education, of course, and November 20th, we'll look at supply chain and logistics, which is sort of an adjacent discipline and an industry to retail and hospitality. And on December 11th, we'll focus on energy and information tech. We are hoping to continue this series into the next year. So one of the things that we aspire to do is to write a series of white papers, maybe one or more. So the transcripts that we create from these meetings will help us in doing so. So if you have an interest in participating in that, please reach out to Jim or me. Thanks, Jim. Over to you.
Great, thank you, Vital. And I'm going to just mention that, as Vital did, there's a lot in the news about the digital transformation of retail and the digital transformation of hospitality. And we have certainly seen a lot of postings on this. We are working on a white paper that will accompany once we finish all of these series. There's a white paper, and we're looking for any references that any members of the ISSIP community might want to share with us. And if you're interested in working on the white paper with us, definitely let us know. This meeting is being recorded, so like all ISSIP meetings, it'll be posted to the ISSIP YouTube after this. Please stay on mute if you're not speaking and put your questions and comments in the chat. The format we're going to follow is the typical one. Vital and I welcome everybody and open up, but then each of our panelists gets 5 minutes to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their work in this area of the digital transformation of retail and hospitality, then maybe give us some provocative insights about the future they see for the digital transformation of one of the specific industries, and then share anything else that they would like. And then we'll, after each panelist has 5 minutes, we'll have the Q&A discussion. So please put your comments and questions in the Q&A. I always like to start by giving some background as to the measures that I see are important. And one of the most important one is the cost of computation going down. The marginal cost of computing is going to zero, as some have said in the industry. And as we see the cost of computation go down, we're also seeing more technology amplification of people, both the good parts and the bad parts, but we see early service robots, AI digital twins of people. And I also want to make the point, because this is very important, that ISSIP focuses not just on technology and the business models for scaling the benefits, but we also look at the institutional arrangements for mitigating harms. So I want to talk a little bit about maybe what some of the measures might be related to caring practices of mass migration of people and how that might relate to hospitality. So Jensen Huang is the person who talks about, he's the CEO of NVIDIA. He's the guy that's always talking about the marginal cost of computing going to zero. He thinks this is obviously the most important measure that's driving the digital transformation of business and society. as the marginal cost of computing goes to zero, we're seeing more service robots, humanoid service robots, and digital twins of people. And if you haven't seen Reid Hoffman's digital twin of himself interviewing himself, I urge you to see it. It's quite impressive, and he believes it's going to scale his abilities for communication in the coming era. And when I was mentioning to Ray Fisk, he's one of our ISSIP fellows, about this upcoming, he couldn't be here on this meeting today, but he did point me to one of his papers on rethinking service systems and public policy for transformative refugee service experience, because there's mass migrations, climate change is going to cause migrations, wars cause migration, lots of reasons for migration. But he has a paper that looks at hospitality versus hostile interactions and caregiving for mass migrations, which I think is worthy of taking a look. This is my version of Moore's Law, and it's one of the important measures of change in digital transformation, is the falling cost of computation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joy Field to introduce herself. And I'll just say, as a little bit of preamble, Joy is a professor at Boston College, and she's also an author who's contributed a book to our ISSIP Business Expert Press series. So with that, Joy, I'll turn it over to you for 5 minutes of your position.
Great. Thank you, Jim. And thank you everyone for being here and being invited, and me being invited to be part of this panel today. So as Jim mentioned, I'm a professor at Boston College. I reside in the business analytics department, but my area is operations management. We have people from IS, we have people, analytics people, we have operations, and we put us all together as part of a bigger department. So some information on my recent work. As Jim mentioned, I'm the author of a book called Designing Service Processes to Unlock Value. The 4th edition was just came out actually last week. And so just in general, my research, it's centered on digital transformation of service processes. I look at the good and the bad of this. So what are the opportunities? We're all very familiar with that. And I think we're familiar with many of the challenges as well. And I'll get into that in more detail when I talk about, where I see things going in retail on the next slide. But not yet. I didn't mean to go there yet. So, but thank you. Thank you for jumping on that. So let me tell you a little bit about the book and what it focuses on. I really, I center the book around 3 trends that are driving sea changes, really, in how service processes are designed and delivered. And note, this is the 4th edition of the book. My first edition came out in 2012. And with the technology changes, 4 years is pushing it, but I do a revision every 4 years. So you should expect to see something else in 2028. And it's just been so much fun and so fascinating. What I've added, digital twins are in this one, obviously much more of a focus on AI in this version of the book, this edition of the book. But since 2012, I've focused on these 3 important trends. One is the rapid pace of technology-enabled service innovation, and we could talk about that all day. Like I said, I've added AI, digital twins, and some other technologies that didn't appear as much in the previous version. And of course, the expanded role of the customer, self-service. This is huge in retail. And then the increasing use of digital service inventory. What do we mean by service inventory? That's work that's happened before the customer actually enters the service system. It's analogous to physical service, or to physical inventory, but it is mostly databases, the information that's being collected about you, by you, that type of thing. How is that being used from an operational perspective to drive innovations in service, make them better, cheaper, faster, that type of thing. And then finally, some other recent work I've been working on, or some modeling work in particular, is about the process for creating human technology synergies at the organizational front line. So with employees, but also these things tend to be very applicable to customers as well. How do we make sure that the technologies we're adopting and the people who are using those technologies fit together and create value overall? Now, next, Jim. So here are a few thoughts that I have on the future of retail's digital transformation. Just to provide you a little bit of background, back to my book, I said 2012 was the first year, and in 2012 for the first edition. And in that version or that edition of the book, I used an example of ATMs versus self-service checkout at the grocery store. And back then, everyone's like, oh, I really don't like self-service checkout. So it was sort of, why do people love ATMs but hate self-service checkout? So every time I do an update, a new edition of the book, I think, is that still a good example? And believe it or not, or maybe it's not that hard to believe for those of you who use self-service technology, say at the grocery store, it's still a great example. In fact, there was an article last year saying that I think the title was something, self-service is a failed experiment, which clearly it's not, but it got at many of the things that are difficult still about using self-service technologies, even something as simple as the self-service kiosk at the grocery store. So with that in mind, what I see going forward is retailers are going to be, no, don't go forward. Go back.
Sorry, I accidentally clicked. I'm sorry.
Okay, good. I'm still talking about that one. All right. So what I see is that retailers are becoming more deliberate in balancing the costs and the customer experience when designing, implementing technology-enabled service innovations and the service processes. A good example of that, back to the kiosks, one of the anecdotes in my book is about Costco and their perspective, I guess, and how it's changed on self-service kiosks. They had them, then they didn't like them, then they liked them again, but then they needed to add some more people. So there were, to actually monitor these kiosks. So it was back and forth, right? We love them, we hate them, we love them, we hate them. Now we like them okay, but we definitely need some people involved in that. And so that's what I'm seeing is this effort by retailers to really balance costs and the customer experience. And so omni-channel strategies we're seeing, and this is very much technology driven, that they're trying to leverage the best attributes of these different channels within what I call a combined channel. So here's an example, Crate and Barrel, others are doing this as well. Digital twins of the physical store. So you're sitting there on your computer, but it replicates in many ways the in-store customer shopping experience, but you also get the convenience of online shopping. So Crate and Barrel, for example, is you can see some dishes that you like, and you can click on those dishes, and then it'll set the table for you to see how that looks. It's the experience is like walking through the store as opposed to, just searching on Amazon for, whatever it is that you specifically want to buy. So that's one trend I see is this integration of channels, trying to leverage the best of each channel. And then secondly, retailers and technology suppliers will work on this better alignment of the capabilities of the employees and the service technologies with the capabilities of the employees and the customers as well. And so in that sense, that's very aligned with that second research trend that I was talking about, or second research project that I've been working on, trying to figure out how do we make sure that the humans and technologies act in a synergistic way. And we all know about this, privacy and data security, other types of things are challenging as well. With the use of AI and data analytics, some, hopefully not too many, but some organizations are trying to figure out what's the customer breaking point? How bad can our service be before customers defect, and try to reduce costs that way by not losing customers, but not providing the same level of service. So there's a whole variety of things going on in a positive direction, and obviously some negatives as well. That's it. Last PowerPoint. And this is just some ways to contact me if you're interested. If you're interested in the book, you can click on the Business Expert Press link, and the interview as well that I've done before, and my email and Boston College web presence. Thank you, Jim.
Great. Thank you, Joy. And definitely want to circle back on that technology adoption in retail, the good and the bad. So I'm sure we'll get some questions on that later. But moving right along, and please take a screen snapshot of this, and these slides will be posted to ISSIP SlideShare later if you want to be able to click on them. So up next, we have Haluk Demirkan. Haluk is at Amazon. He's also a professor at University of Washington, Tacoma. And for those, many people in the community already know Haluk because he's one of the co-founders of ISSIP in 2012. He's a board member of ISSIP. So Haluk, Your interview with me is out there already on this topic, as is Joy's, but I'll turn it over to you. And I see you added a couple slides, and just let me know when you want me to advance the slides. So, Luke.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon or good morning for some of us. First of all, Jim and Professor Prabhu, thank you for inviting me for this great event. As Jim mentioned, my name is Haluk Demirkan. I have been a professor in academia for almost 20 years. I am a professor of service innovation and business analytics at University of Washington. And also last 4 years, I've been working as a science leader in Amazon devices and services in context of machine learning, AI, optimization, simulation, whole this digital transformation world. I'm also one of the co-founders and board of directors at ISSIP. So can we go to next slide? Thank you. So I wanted to start with this very simple picture. So basically, with this slide, I wanted to mention, I said that, customer basic needs do not change, but our behavior changes. So when we really look at this, individuals as a customer, we want protection, capital growth, risk sharing, and all so many different things. And same, for 40, 50, 100 years ago versus now. Only thing, the primary thing changed since then is I think, convenience that comes from personalization, maybe comes from co-creation, comes from network and sharing. So basically, we we as a human, we buy things we bought, 20, 30 years ago. Now we still buy similar things today in order to have protection, capital growth, risk sharing, and convenience. So can we go to the next one? So from these, I know I have a little bit crowded picture here. I had an article actually about 2018 in context of retail AI. And the title of the article was Adapt or Die Moment for Retail Industry because of this new digital things happening in our world. So in this slide, my point is that we have this digital transformation, or we have, or I call it actually service transformation enabled by digital technologies. So like I said, we as a customer, we want to hire a product to do the job and or deliver some of those needs we want, right? In this context, smart technologies or digital technologies are everywhere. I think so many organizations are using right now or planning to use or have been using different digital technologies in order to deliver or make and deliver products and services. I think the complexity in retail industry or hospitality is that competition is much tougher, because I think especially in retail industry, the profit margin is so small, in my opinion. Profit margin is so small. How much cheaper companies try to sell, right? I mean, there's some limit. After a certain point, they need to give products free, which means company will be out of business. So for that context, I wanted to really point out what retail industry may need to do or how they can do so they can adapt digital transformation concepts in order to increase their profit margin and stay in business. So we can go to next slide, Jim, if you don't mind. So my main point from my concept is I came up with the accuracy matters, metrics and accuracy. I mean, I have been doing research in digital transformation, service innovation, AI, machine learning last 20 years, and last 4 years, especially when I'm working with Amazon, I notice everything is about ROI. How do we define ROI? How do we measure it? How do we evaluate it? How do we, deploy it? From all the way from start to the end. What I mean is, as a company, when they are talking about the goals or roadmap, everything is about ROI. Like if I need to deliver a product faster to my customer, okay, How can I do that? Using some digital technologies, but what is the ROI for that? Development and deployment and production. Because some projects, some products, I may have a very big ROI, but the complexity is over. It might be like a one-time delivery, high ROI, but the too complex to develop. It may take 2-3 years. Or some ROI, maybe marginal ROI small, but I can get bigger ROI with the frequency or using the same topic or same solution multiple times from the repeated usage. It is easier to scale, faster to scale, uh, and then it is easier to develop, right? There's always a balance. So from that concept, I came up a laundry list of different metrics we need to define in order to calculate or even define what is the success measure in context of ROI. What should be our success measure in context of ROI all the way at the beginning, so I can really say later on in my progress of development and deployment of these digital technologies, when to push to the production or when to uh, just to stop working on it, um, and then deliver it. So I have scientific metrics, some laundry list of scientific metrics I mentioned. I pulled from, generative AI projects, for example. I can use some different or machine learning or optimization, different scientific metrics I need to define and define as a success measure and define how am I going to measure this success metric. I have risk and safety, especially in the world of AI world, right? There's a lot of risks happening. Like in my generative AI product, may have a hateful or unfair content, right? Or how to manage sexual content, maybe violent content, self-harm related content. So I need to define what are my risk and safety metrics. Quality metrics kind of gets into the how am I going to evaluate the quality of the output. And of course, business metrics is one of the important ones, especially in a corporate world, in my opinion. How do I define dollar or time saving impacts? Those are the two I have seen. I mean, we always talk about customer satisfaction as one of the business metrics, but I really think most companies deliver customer satisfaction when they have a metric or measurement in context of dollar and time savings already happens. So from this, basically, I strongly believe we need to define these metrics and measures, success metrics, right beginning of the projects, any projects, and then measure these continuously and monitor and evaluate them, and also think about, again, these technologies, in one way, Jim actually had a slide earlier saying some of these technologies are cheaper. I agree. I can go to one of the stores today and buy a hard drive for $50 for a 2 gig hard drive. But on the other side, in my opinion, complexity is increasing to develop a larger scalable solutions because now we have more options to choose from, in my opinion. And also there's also, especially if we get into the AI world, I think artificial intelligence is a prediction. It's an educated guess. That's how I define myself. And I tell my students, it's an educated guess, but it's still a guess. AI or machine learning solutions, especially. And then if this guess is not right, and there will be cases guess will not be 100% accurate, how do we handle it? That's why I came up with this human in the loop concept, which has been, which most of us been talking about. So we can go to my next slide. So, and then this is my last slide. So from this metrics, measures, ROI, calculations, bottom line I wanted to say is the trust, right? Trust for organization using these digital technologies, trust that the end customer is using these technologies, and then how we develop these technologies. And then Jim and I, we've been working on some research areas in context of collaborative intelligence. We believe, trust really can happen when we have combination of people, right processes, and then these smart technologies. And thank you. Just wanted to point out.
Thank you very much, Haluk. And we're
Sure.
going to move right along to Rajiv, and I am going to stop my share, and Rajiv is going to present. And while he's getting his presentation up, I mentioned Haluk is an academic industry type. Well, Rajiv is as well. He was one of the early pioneers of vision AI, and then as an academic, and then he decided to become an entrepreneur and start a company. So he is also one of these perfect, we like ISSIP participants who have like 1 foot in academia and 1 foot in industry, especially bridging that gap. So Rajiv, over to you. I think you might be on mute still. Yep, you are. Let's see if I can unmute
All right.
you.
So thank you, Jim. Thank you, Vital. And just as Jim mentioned, I started out in the academia, and instead of putting 1 feet in academia and 1 feet in industry, I actually put both the feet in the industry. We decided it's too stressful to have both sides. So after early career in University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign at Penn State in AI, computer vision, human-computer interaction, I decided to jump full into looking at really applying some of the technologies that was developed. The latest one was developed at Penn State, and really taking it to fruition in a particular industry. Long story, I won't go into that, but we settled on one very key application that we saw in retail. We saw that, of course, retail was evolving, but physical retail really was lagging. And one of the big reasons for lag was there was no systematic information of what is actually happening inside the store. So there are many applications of the technologies that we developed. Frankly, we have licensed our technology to many people who are going to other transformations like automated checkout and things like that. But we decided to focus on applying AI to really bring visibility into what's going on in the store, so that it not only captures all the things like self-checkout and all other transformations that are happening in the retail in terms of how it's impacting the experience. But like was mentioned earlier, shopper behaviors are changing constantly. They are coming in with a different expectation today than they came in with 10 years back. So how do you take all of that and empower retailers as well as product companies with insights that they can then apply to meet the needs of the shoppers better? So with that, we focused on sort of really market research, applying AI for really increasing the visibility in the store. And our sort of philosophy was very simple. You can capture that information from shoppers through many means, but we believe behavior is the most authentic source of truth. Behavior doesn't lie. People might lie in their surveys and other feedback. So how do you capture the experience in a very clear way? And that's what the focus was for video mining for my personal work. So we believe basically, you can think of physical retail as a very complex environment where every piece of the stimulus impacts the behavior in some way. And of course, you can have an online analogy, but online is relatively simpler compared to physical world. So it's very important to capture all the different things that shopper experience in store, so they can tie the two together to understand what is impacting the experience and where is an opportunity for improving the experience, both in terms of every aspect of shopping, whether it's at the checkout, whether it's finding a product, whether it's total store experience. So that's what we had focused on in applying our sort of AI platform for. And I think the video will play now. So just a very quick, basically the AI sensors that are tracking shoppers anonymously throughout the store. And basically we track the shopper every 10th of a second. In store, we track about 1.6 billion shopping trips per year, process about 4 terabytes of data per hour. So huge amount of behavioral data that can be utilized to basically then apply more sophisticated deep learning algorithms to translate into what does it mean? What is the decision process like? What's influencing somebody's decision in front of a shelf when there are a bunch of products which are constantly changing and things like that. So we are basically applying AI to capture and unlock the meaning of the shopper behavior and seeing how it's evolving. Fortunately for us, we have worked with major retailers around the country, so we can collect data on an ongoing way. So we can also track that trend. In fact, we have lots of stories about how things change during and after COVID in terms of the physical process of shopping in store, particularly for grocery and convenience and other retail formats like that. Sorry. Yeah, so that was a very, very brief introduction. Really, my one lesson from moving from academia to industry was focus on this one thing, and this instead of using the same technology for many other things that we could have used it for preventing theft, for operational issues in store like out of stock or checking out, we decided to focus on really unlocking the behavioral aspect of it, and therefore we can get access to a lot of big picture question. I know Joy mentioned about self-checkout. We track what people are saying as well as what people are doing about self-checkout so that we can separate the truth from the hype, basically. What is actually happening? How people adopting? When they do have a choice between self-checkout and traditional checkout, what do they actually do? And not looking at one or two, but looking at 100 million such events per month so that we can truly track how the population as a whole is adopting some of the technology and what can sort of retailers do to use that information as part of the equation. And yes, ROI always comes into play in terms of any means. So we also provide very direct measurements of how any changes are impacting the shopping behavior and therefore eventually productivity of the store, which is extremely important for this very hyper-competitive physical retail environment. My contact information is there. If you want to learn any more about this application, you're welcome to look at videomining.com and contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic, Rajiv. And I totally agree. And it's in the interview that we did. And I put some links to folks to the interview when we were having our discussion. I see retail at Costco, every week. There's just tons of, so many people there at the 7-Elevens, lots of people. And one thing I don't think that we discussed is my sons and I were and wife were very into hiking, and these sports stores are just packed with people constantly buying stuff for outdoor and coaching. And so I see a lot of application areas for the video mining that you're talking about to facilitate some of the interactions there. Our final panelist is Mark Anderson, who's like me, a retired IBMer, but unlike me, Mark is in New Zealand, and he is very, very active in public policy areas, and sort of made me rethink hospitality from the perspective of we're all getting a little older, and a lot of people as they get older move into elder care, and that there's a lot of digital transformation happening with the hospitality around elder care. I will go ahead and put up the one slide that we have because it has some Vimeo links that Mark shared with us. But over to you, Mark, while I get the slides going again.
Thank you, Jim. And to introduce myself very briefly, I'm originally a physicist. So my background's hardcore science. Became an engineer to make some money. Got into telecommunication systems engineering at scale, and then eventually became a strategist, I think is the simplest way of describing myself. I worked in IBM Consulting in the strategy and change team, working with public sector organizations, particularly in New Zealand and Australia, on large-scale public policy and digital technology transformation as it impact the delivery of government services. For my career until I left IBM and joined the Ministry of Health and continued to focus in on digital transformation in the health system, which also includes the aged care system. Gave me an introduction to the importance of service provision within the aged care sector and all the challenges that go with that. And eventually then it came time to retire from the Ministry of Health, but I still had an agenda very much triggered by my experience working with Jim Sporer and other extremely bright people in IBM on the boundary between IBM research and academia and actual application to public policy and industry. And so I had a number of ideas, open source ideas from that period that I wanted to apply, and founded Kinevin Research New Zealand to actually provide a vehicle for doing that. And we It's, for those of you who have not heard the term Cynefin, it's a Welsh word, and its most famous application is the Cynefin Decision Support Framework, a way of very simply having a discussion around what kind of decision am I needing to make in a situation. And it helps bring into sharp relief that our decision-making processes depend on whether the situation we're dealing with is stable and clear, or whether it's dynamic and constantly shifting or chaotic. And that simple application of the fact that we live in three different worlds, the ordered world, the complex world, and the chaotic world, actually makes a fundamental difference to how our decisions will work. And that brought me into, well, how do you apply that concept? Which was the fundamental thing I wanted to do. I'm not a great scientist, but I love working around scientists and applying, and academics generally, but applying their ideas practically in industry. And in doing so recently, and since founding the company in 2017 and being part of the global Cynefin company network, I had the opportunity to apply it in education, very much to student and teacher experience feedback, very much in health, in the patient and health professional relationship, and understanding the experience in that moment of delivery of service. Safety and well-being. A lot of our work is actually on improving how people make decisions in dealing with situations, high-risk situations where they're at risk of killing themselves or killing others. And then finally, and maybe there's a link here into the whole area of aged care. And in particular, we've been working with an alliance in Australia called the Lantern Alliance, which is focused on improving the quality of life of older Australians through the joy of food. That's their tagline, improving the quality of life. So qualitative measurement of is at the center of what they're doing, of older Australians through the joy of food. Again, joy is a really important concept. And from a customer experience perspective, well, how do you measure that? Because if you're going to make service system improvement, how do you measure things like quality of life and joy of food so that you can actually start constructing an improvement system? And what that's led me down to, and it was part of the original Cynefin concepts, was actually bridging this boundary between quantitative research that we're very good at through doing surveys, to qualitative research, which we're very good at doing at small scale. There's huge numbers of people out there who have expert techniques for understanding the qualitative perspective of client groups, but they've struggled to scale. So we've been trying to figure out how to measure, how to combine quantitative and qualitative measurement, and very much from the perspective of the participant in the system. So the distinction, for example, between the video monitoring system is what we're doing is actually asking people to describe at scale, questioning, creating better questions to create people to describe their experience, and then reflect on their experience and what's important in their experience, and then using that data, pattern data, to inform how we then facilitate the co-design of service system improvement. And we've now reached a point where we, through, for example, the Lantern Alliance, there's 70 aged care facilities in Australia who've used these tools and techniques over the last 10 years. So we now have a body of evidence from that work on actually how to bring in concepts from hospitality, from many different areas, into the way the aged care residential facilities deliver the food, nutrition, and dining experience to their residents. And that process of doing it has started to make a significant improvement to the quality of life for those people. And the last point I will make is just how much of a contrast that approach is, which is empowering for the staff of those facilities, and enabling the staff that are involved in service delivery to understand the tiny detail of what they do that matters to their resident experience and improve that, as opposed to the large-scale compliance-driven systems that government's trying to introduce using survey techniques and other techniques to try and research and drive change through those traditional control-based as opposed to empowering techniques. And that's I think a very quick walkthrough what has been for me a fascinating quote unquote retirement job. But back to you, Jim.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, panelists. Now we're going to go to Q&A and questions. I just also want to point out that Mariana Segala, because of the time zone, she wasn't able to join us, but she did a very nice recording on the future of hospitality industry. So be sure to listen to that interview if you get a chance. And I like the fact Mariana said she was born in a hotel because her family runs a luxury hotel, I guess, in the Greece area, grew up in a hotel, did every job in a hotel. Now I'm a professor and researcher of the hotel industry on digital transformation. So I just want to put in an advertisement for going out and seeing Mariana's. She's also an ISSIP ambassador and posts a lot on LinkedIn. So definitely check out Mariana's comments. And now we're ready for Q&A. And Vital, why don't you ask the first round of questions and I'll look at the chat and catch up on the second round. So
Jim.
Vital.
Thanks, Jim. First question that came to my mind is one of the technologies that look like it's going to be a big breakthrough type of innovation in retail is Amazon's Go Store, where you just walk in, pick what you want, and walk out, awesome experience, packed with AI and vision. I'm not sure if Rajiv had some technology in there, but possible. And we're talking about self-checkout. I'm one of those who doesn't use self-checkout unless the line is like 12 customer long on the other side. So any thoughts on where this Go Store concept might be going, or if it is stuck because of shrink, as the retailers call it? Anybody? Haluk, Rajiv, Joy. Haluk, you can take a Fifth Amendment too, no problem.
I'm not a panelist, but I have a thought, if I could just jump in for a second.
Go ahead, Kevin. And I want to put a plug for your co-intelligence book. Kevin's also an ISSIP ambassador, so I'll put in a plug for your book so you don't have to, but put the link in later. Go for your question.
Thanks. Related to what you're suggesting is, we've been imagining that, and we've talked to Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions about this, is that shrinkage, right, for the high value things in places where flash mobs have gone in to grab high value merchandise, is rather than putting that behind plexiglass or other protective, means so that somebody has to go and unlock it, is the stores need to start embrace vending machine technology inside the store. And so that when you present your loyalty fob, things like razor blades or perfume or whatever are actually dispensed by the vending machine, right? So that you don't have to go find a person to go do it. It automates the process, and to some degree, if it's associated the right way, you would not have to go to the cash register to buy it because you bought it at the point of dispensing, and that you'd get a receipt and you'd just be able to walk out of the store. So that's an additional, way of thinking about automating retail.
So just to weigh in on that particular application, it's all about adoption and ROI. And so,
Yeah.
So it's really those two things. I mean, it's also about technology. Technology is not the easiest. That's the automated checkout was the most challenging sort of AI use case in a physical uncontrolled environment. But Amazon and a lot of Amazon wannabes have followed that, but I never kind of believed in that particular application because of the challenges for technology adoption and ROI that's required at the level to be scalable at every single store. So that the components of that might appear in some formats, in my personal opinion, but I think it's an over-ambitious application of the technology for just workout.
I'll just end by saying, anybody who has presented themselves to self-checkout knows what a kludge of technology this is, right? It doesn't look integrated at all, right? Because, you know, the way that you pay and the way that you scan, the way that you, it is still is ripe for great industrial design. So I'll leave it at that.
I can also make a couple comments, not as an Amazon researcher, but I wanted to say from what I have seen. I think as Kevin mentioned, I don't know if any of you been in Target stores lately. A lot of items are actually in a locked cabinets in Target stores because of theft is going so high, right? In Target, that's what I noticed. So I guess the balance, I agree with Rajiv. I think it's about the ROI. And I really think one of the challenge in retail industry, like I said, individual product profit margins are so small. So how to cover that technology cost, I guess, like how many products you need to sell in order to be able to cover the cost of that technology and implementation in a store. I mean, I am a big time user of that walk in and walk out store concepts, especially in downtown areas. Stores are much smaller and speed is the most important convenience for me, especially when I'm going to work or going, you know, I want to just walk in, just grab something, walk out. But in some other cases, I don't mind spending hours in a grocery store just walking around and do shopping. I guess that time and space complexity, or what I said, time and space balance, I guess, some of these solutions to be used. Yeah.
So let me ask one other technology-related question. Many years ago, our local grocery store had a little robot that used to go around, check for spills and all that. And I asked the store manager, why do they have that? Because it's just going around more or less pointlessly. And I got a very interesting answer. They want the customers, the shoppers in the store, to get used to the idea of a robot doing something eventually. So anybody seen, heard anything coming down the pike on this? Is a robot going to do anything like replenish a shelf anytime soon, or is that 3 more generations out there?
Joy, I think you had some comments on that when we were talking, didn't you?
Well, so the technology in particular, I can't comment on, right? The capabilities of these robots, but I think just in general, and this gets back to, right, the self-service kiosks, right? You can think of them as stationary robots in a sense, right? But, you know, people get used to these things over time. This is what's happened in stores as well, right? You have you were saying, right, that you wouldn't get into a self-service checkout line unless it's at least 12 deep, right? And so there are a lot of people like you still, right, that would avoid it like the plague. But you're seeing, as was posted, right, 55% of transactions are happening with self-service kiosks in grocery stores. And so obviously you are now the minority of that. And I think any of these technologies where you see people, you know, have an opportunity to interact with, have an opportunity to get used to it, and have a person, right? This is kind of what Luke was talking about, right? The human aspect of it, having a person supporting it and essentially educating the consumers on the use of these technologies is absolutely critical. And so that's where we're going to see, you know, acceptance of robots. We're going to see acceptance of self-service technologies. We're going to see increasing acceptance of these technologies as they just become normalized, as they become how you do things. So yeah, that's what I.
So one comment I did want to add to that was that we have seen personally when we evaluate different things is wherever there's a forced adoption, when we are actually not giving the choices to consumers, it actually fails. So even if the self checkout and other checkout technologies sort of expand, if that's the only means of checking out, then shoppers will revolt against it and go to some other channel. So there is a but whereas if you give a choice slowly, they might be it might be convinced when this technology matures and you don't have as much irritation to go through the self checkout. So
Right,
there
and
is that.
exactly, and try it one time, and then maybe it's not so bad. The next time you're not quite so worried about it. Every time I go to the grocery store, I look to see how many people are in line and how many people are at the self-service checkout. And I have over the years, because I've been tracking this for a long time, not as quantitatively as you have, Rajiv, but I've been tracking it for a long time, just anecdotally, and more people. The lines are shorter and shorter for the full service when you're seeing a lot of people at the self-service, and this was not the case even a few years ago.
It's something that struck me in the last couple of weeks, literally. We don't have a Costco in town, Jim, but we have a Sam's Club. So that's probably the reason why we don't have a Costco. They used to have a person at the exit door to kind of randomly sample what's in your basket and what's on your receipt. But that has been automated. So they start scanning what we put on the cart right from the checkout line. And now there is still a human in the loop. Look, that was the point I wanted to make. There's a human in the loop that just waves us off because they get an early checkout in all green or whatever. So apparently I didn't put any razor blades in there that I didn't pay for, so I'm good.
Well, speaking of Sam's Club, they just opened in Dallas a fully no cashiers, as well as nobody to check your receipts, but you have to use their scan and pay app, right? So it's cutting out, right, the part of the demographics that don't want to use that. They're saying that so many more of their customers are now Gen Zers who are happy using the apps, and so they're willing to forego, right? So back to cost and ROI and metrics like that, they're willing to forego those customers or hope that they'll eventually feel comfortable enough to adopt it, to have, a store that literally doesn't have any employees or really any employees who are really interacting substantively with their customers. So it'll be an interesting experience to see how that all plays out.
I think this will also probably will tie to when and where we want to have more or less human interaction, or more or less human interaction is more or less important, what I will say, right? I think, like I said, if I don't have much time, I just want to go in, get something and go. Whatever gives me the fastest delivery, I will probably accept that. But if I am in a different mood, different location, different place, I probably want to have a more human interaction, or at least see some people walking around just as a human. I don't know. That's my personal opinion.
I also agree, Haluk. I feel that if I made the effort to show up at a store, somebody ought to, acknowledge me. I like using self-checkout, but there's so many times it gets stuck. And, I like my Whole Foods experience because there's just somebody there immediately, perceives it. So it's the seamless experience when I'm ready for it. And then, of retail business, it's all about, if you've gone in person, you want to feel it, check out, experience things and the unexpected things. That's, somebody talked about joy earlier. And then they benefit because you buy things you don't need, but you buy, what you love. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. And the other one that I don't appreciate is when, Whole Foods is because of Amazon, trying to grab my biometrics for sales, like using my hand and all of that, because, we're not even thinking, and yes, different generations might give that information away, but later they might not trust you because you grabbed their biometrics for a retail experience where it was not necessary. Anyway, that's just something I wanted to share as well.
Great. Vital, any more questions?
Just a comment. I started teaching a course in retail services engineering somewhere around 2007, mostly subscribed by industrial engineering students. And Raji was kind enough to couple of his engineers as guest speakers over the years. So if you folks have any thoughts, suggestions on cool content to excite Gen Z and the 19-year-olds, please shoot me an email. I'll be teaching it again in spring.
Okay, thank you. I would like, we've got like 4 minutes left, and so I'll just mention again, you know, the recording will be posted to the ISSIP YouTube, the slides will be posted to ISSIP SlideShare, and thank you panelists and thank you participants for joining. I wanted to ask one final question in the 3 minutes we've got left. Unfortunately, it's a very complex question, so I'm trying to think about how to reduce it down so I can get like maybe not the 1-word answer from each of the panelists, but the 1-sentence answer. The service systems are getting more complex, as Haluk mentioned, and yet and you know, and there's bad actors, right? You know, any technology amplifies, you know, good and bad, and we haven't found a way around that yet in any society, any business or society, I think. So, given the complexity of these service systems is increasing as we get more of the digital transformation happening, I'm just wondering if you know, and I'll start with Joy, if you agree with that slide that Haluk said, and Haluk, you're going to go last, where he said, you know, these basic needs of people aren't changing, but the behaviors are because the environment's changed with all this more digital. Did you agree with that, or did you think, no, that's not true, our needs are changing too? What are your thoughts, Joy? And sorry if I
Put me on the spot, right? So I mean, one thing that's important, you're talking about the systems getting more complex, but it's really about the user interface. So I think that, you know, I think people are becoming more sophisticated in the use of technology, not people of my parents' generation, where we're talking about people in their, you know, upper 80s, right? Neither of my parents would use an ATM. And that's about the simplest technology you can get. But I think the complexity, right, if it's internal and it's still functional, but the user interface is straightforward, I think, you know, people will, you know, continue to adopt those technologies. The other thing is that I think the younger generation are more comfortable, right, with glitches, and they're more comfortable with using technologies and trying things out and that type of thing. So human needs, yeah, I think people have a need for connection. I think people have a need, but you're right, it's about the dollars and it's about the time. People want to, you know, not spend more time on processes than they need to, and use technologies in a way that benefit them.
Okay, I'll take that as yes, the needs are pretty much the same, but the interface is constantly changing. And if the user experience can be made nice enough, then the adoption goes a little faster. And Rajiv, you see the complexity increasing. Are the needs the same?
I mean, yes and no, because the needs are changing maybe more slowly. The fundamental needs of social interactions and other things will be there, but I think people are, and I'm just focused on the box, the physical box that people walk into. So when people are coming with a slightly different mindset, expectations, needs, and sophistication with things, and our tolerance for things. So from that sense, that there is a slow, all other things that are happening in society and technology is influencing when people step into the store gradually.
Yeah. And so Mark, are needs staying the same and experience changing? What's your view?
I think at a fundamental level, I think needs are staying the same. The human needs for social interaction are the same. But listening to this conversation, what it's really highlighted for me is the distinction between the hospitality industry and the retail industry. And what I'm seeing in this conversation is themes around the importance of automation in retail, whereas the application of digital transformational technologies in hospitality has been about augmenting the human experience, actually removing the distractors to improving the interaction between a doctor and a patient, a student and a teacher. And that fundamental concept of, am I using digital technology to augment, or am I using it to automate, was a very strong conceptual theme underneath today's discussion.
Very good. Thanks, Mark. And Haluk, I know what you think, but could you repeat
I
it?
mean, basic needs are, I think, same. I guess our behavior is changing, and I think we are asking for more convenience. But I'm also thinking, I want to come back to the hospitality. Like, hospitality is I think another good example can be about time and space. Like, if I'm going for a vacation, I'll be honest, I want to have a simplest remote control possible in that hotel room. I don't want a bunch of lights, gadgets, so many complex remote control. I don't want to spend 10 minutes to figure out how that remote control works. Just because I'm going to vacation, doesn't matter what it plays on TV. But on the other side, if I'm going to, I guess, business trip, I just want to do fast check-in and fast check-out. Just a thought, just as a given example.
Well,
I guess the time and space and hospitality. I think hospitality is having a little bit more challenge about digital transformation, probably because of individuals' expectations.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time. I want to thank the panelists again. I want to thank the participants. I see some great comments in the chat that we didn't get to, unfortunately, but we do try to keep these relatively short because we get views when we keep them short. So thank you all very much. And remember, November 20th is the event of logistics and supply chain. So that'll be our next event.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.